Thank you, Kate. And hello, everybody. Hello again. I've been thinking a lot about you all. I really enjoyed meeting you all on Tuesday, and I'm delighted that a colleague of mine, Lisa Fuchs, has agreed to join us. She's incredibly busy, and I'm tremendously grateful to her. She's probably doing this because she knows I'm leaving, and she's agreed to, one last favor. But I really do appreciate it, Lisa. And I can't think of a better thing for me to be doing on my last day of work at the Coady Institute after 25 years than leading off the day with this workshop, and to be doing it with all of you, including you, Lisa. So yeah, I've known Lisa for, oh gosh, 8 or 9 years. I mean, it seems it's been a long time, and we've worked very, very closely together on a number of things, largely asset-based community development in Kenya. But Lisa's been part of many international gatherings and working and collaborating with others in our network as well. What she has done that I find really remarkable and so appropriate here is that she has built a team of colleagues at ICRAF that really has put ABCD at the center of their work and have been testing ABCD as a methodology for improving take up of agroecology, agroforestry, which was initially the idea. But because ICRAF, the organization that she works with, World Agroforestry Center, is involved not just in Kenya, but all over Africa, in fact, all over the world, in a number of significant multi-country initiatives, she has taken the work that they've been doing testing this approach in Western Kenya and actually built materials and training modules and approaches for introducing this into multiple projects that ICRAF's involved in. So she's managed to scale this work, and in the process has learned an enormous amount about how this works and what does work, what doesn't work. And it's evolving constantly, eh, Lisa? I mean, it's a constantly evolving set of tools, approaches that she has built with her team. It's one of the things that at Coady, when people ask us, where can we find ABCD in practice that really is exemplary, that you would want to send us to look at, I would choose Lisa, in terms of the work that she's been doing, put her right at the top of the list. I also think our partner Wise in Addis is also doing amazing work. So the fact that there are a couple of partners in the same, and TGMP, which I just don't know that well, from what I have seen in our early engagements, is that they have been doing some really groundbreaking work in terms of feminist approaches and how ABCD fits into that. But Lisa is, in addition to building this ABCD team and leading it at ICRAF, here's where I think she's even more appropriate for this gathering. She is also the scientific coordinator of the transformative partnership platform on agroecology. She plays a key role in the Global Agricology Coalition, which is formed, which involves a number of organizations, some which maybe would be able to connect in with you. And she's the lead coordinator in Kenya of a newly formed CIGAR initiative. And CIGAR is the Consultative Group in International Agriculture Research, CIGAR initiative on agroecology. So, and I before some of you joined, and I think Julie was here, but we were mentioning that she's been working on a draft paper around feminism and agroecology. So, I mean, the connection points between what Lisa's doing and what the RWCC program is all about are just incredible. The connections to ABCD, the fact that she's in Kenya and has a team of Kenyan colleagues, and that she's also connected to our Ethiopian and our Tanzanian colleagues in the Engage project are just, too much to pass up on. So Lisa, it is my absolute pleasure to have that you are here. I am very grateful for you being here. And I think just for everyone's benefit in terms of what we plan to do today, and Kate will later send you a sort of session plan, so you have that as a document along with Lisa's presentation, is that we plan to have the bulk of the first hour to be Lisa presenting the work that they have been doing in Kenya. We'll see where we are after that presentation in terms of time. We will take our 5-minute break at the halfway point. but we do want to have some immediate opportunity for you to ask questions, make comments right after her presentation. And then I have put together a few questions that I thought we could discuss in plenary rather than in small groups, because we don't know how much time will be left, that really much more focus in then on the work that you're doing, the tools you're using, the ways that you have adapted tools for agroecology, the way that you see ABCD tools being done in that way, and then looking at it from a bit of a gender lens and saying, what else needs to be really done here to adapt these tools to ensure that gender equality is at the heart of what we're doing. So that's how we plan that session. Kate will wrap us up at the end with some next steps and where she sees it going from here. But without further ado, I'd like to ask you or invite you, Lisa, to lead us through a presentation. I think you're going to be sharing screen, and I assume Kate's made you a co-host, so that can happen.
Thank you. Thank you very much, God, and welcome everybody, and nice to meet you all. I think I'll just jump right into my presentation, because I noticed that initially I thought it would be a very short thing, but then I noticed there's actually a lot of things to share. Sometimes we don't fully understand the relevance of things until we think about it. So I prepared many slides actually. Please feel free to ask me questions anytime if I speak too fast, which sometimes happens when I get excited about things. Please let me know.
I'll keep an eye. I will keep an eye on the chat, Lisa. And if there's a moment
please.
there, I'll wave at you and let you know. But this is, oh my goodness, terrific to see.
Wonderful. I'm actually just thinking, so I'm at the office here, but our internet is not super stable. I'm wondering whether I should just switch off my camera, but then again, sometimes it's not nice to listen to someone who doesn't have their camera on. Do you have a specific practice around that?
Whatever you're comfortable with. People's comfort is the best thing. So whatever you feel best with.
You know what I'll do then? Then I'll switch off my camera, and not because I'm uncomfortable, but rather because my bandwidth is not great. And I'd rather have you hear me, and then later in the discussion, I'll switch back on. Okay?
Very good.
Okay, great. Okay, let's get right into it. I have my bar here that is standing in my way here. Okay, there we go. Okay, so as God was saying, I would like to speak today about ABCD in agroecology, and particularly about strengthening agroecology's social component in theory and in practice by building on asset and strength-based approaches. So I'll be speaking, I'll be making conceptual comments and then share a lot about our work here, and then round it back up with really looking at how ABCD and agroecology align. So session flow, I have 4 major parts. A general introduction to agroecology concepts. Here, I am not sure whether that is something that has been done at the team level, whether there are different understandings, but I'll just introduce agroecology concepts the way we use them here to make sure that we are all on one page. Then the second part, I'll be speaking about the evolution of ABCD at CIFOR-ICRAF. Part 3, sorry, there's someone missing, conceptual congruence between ABCD and agroecology, and the last part, summary and closing thoughts. So in terms of the general introduction to agroecology concepts, I have three slides, 3 parts. First of all, the general approach to what is agroecology, then an overview of different agroecology principles and transition levels, and then agroecology simplified, something that I have started noticing is very useful. So just as very general introduction, agroecology is a polysemic concept with over 30 different definitions adopted by various governments, academia, non-governmental organizations and actors. What matters about the agroecology concept is that it combines ecological and social considerations in the pursuit of optimized interactions between plants, animals, humans, and the environment, while focusing on a sustainable and fair food system. So it includes ecological, social consideration, different system components, but also looks at the system level. And fundamentally, it's human-centered and focuses on contextualized solutions. There are many different conceptual frameworks, as we have said, but 2 of the most famous ones that are generally being used is the 10 elements from FAO from 2018, and the Commission on Food Security's high-level panel of experts, CFS-HLPE, 13 principles from 2019. So as at CIFOR-ICRAF, we typically use the 13 agroecological principles as articulated by HLPE to guide our work most of the time. And those principles, they encompass and incorporate, if you will, the FAO 10 elements. So there's no opposition there. There's just a difference in focus and in direction, if you will. So the 13 principles, that you can see them here in the middle in the circle. And out of the 13 principles, 7 are mainly concerned with agro-ecosystem management, sorry, and to encourage farming that is in harmony with nature and confers resilience. So those include avoiding environmentally disruptive inputs, recycling, using and maintaining biodiversity, synergies, which refers to managing interaction amongst all system components, economic diversification, and ensuring animal and soil health. So those are the 7 principles that are mainly concerned with the agroecosystem management. And then there are 6 small principles that focus more on whole food systems and are fundamental to catalyzing and sustaining transformative change. Those are co-creation and sharing of knowledge, which is represented at the center here. And you can tell as well, they're all interconnected. But here in this overview, co-creation and sharing of knowledge is really at the center of all the other principles. Land and natural resource governance, connectivity, especially in the context of connectivity between producers and consumers, social values and diets, which has a strong component in gender, fairness, and participation. Participation here referring to the agency of producers, consumers, and all other actors in food system levels. You also see on the left-hand side the 5 levels of agroecological transitions that were described by Gliesman, and it is related, although not the same. So I'm giving you the different concepts that are relevant in the context of agroecology. But what matters, I think, in all of that is really that agroecology the principles are to be applied simultaneously, and which has led to a manifestation of agroecology as a science, but also a set of practices and a series of social movements. And the idea is that across these different domains, across these different spheres, if you will, needs to be collective action in order for widespread system change to happen, which is the ultimate objective, agroecology for food system transformation. And what I included here in this slide as well is the link to the Agroecology TPP website and community of practice, where you can find a lot of resources, including videos, including speeches, but also literature, short news pieces, etc. And I'll be happy also to speak more about concepts later. Here, I included 2 more overviews that are commonly used. On the left-hand side is a brief explanation of the 13 principles and what they entail from Sinclair and all. And then on the right-hand side is a more graphic representation of the different principles. They are organizing principles. So they are organized across 3 organizing principles: improving resource efficiency, strengthening resilience, and securing social equity. And it also indicates the different farm and off-farm system components. That I included in the slides without going into detail now, to make sure that you have them as well. So what I said initially was that sometimes I feel in the wider agroecology discussion, people get confused, and it's like, how is it different? How is it the same? Like, what exactly is it? Why does it matter? So I have started using the idea that agroecology can be simplified into 3 main components. One is integrated natural farming, or beyond that, the idea of living and farming with and in respect of nature. So both on farm and beyond private farmland. But then beyond that is really this idea of a circular economy, of shortening value chains, value webs, etc., and a very strong emphasis on social justice. So when sometimes people think that agroecology is just like organic farming, it's important to keep in mind that there's very strong system components and social justice components. And then just another thing that I find useful as well is that agroecology focuses at 3 levels at least, really practice level, but process and systems as well. And not just practice, because as much as sometimes people think agroecology is just organic farming, it is the same thing that people often think agroecology is just a specific set of practices that are being implemented on farm. But it's more than that, it is process and system as well. So moving on now to the evolution of ABCD at CIFOR-ICRAF, I have these subpoints that I would like to introduce. First of all, I would like to introduce CIFOR-ICRAF as an institution very briefly, and then provide an overview of the ABCD evolution. Sorry, ABCD evolution at ICRAF, and then focus on 3 specific projects, one that we call Pharma dashboards that we implement jointly with Coady colleagues, then focus on the Regreening Africa sustainability planning work that we've been doing, and then specifically the ABCD in Regreening project that has a very explicit agroecology focus. So just briefly, CIFOR-ICRAF is an international research institute working across the globe. What Coady also said in his initial introduction, we have, I come from the ICRAF side, and our ICRAF headquarters is here in Nairobi in Kenya, and CIFOR is headquartered in Indonesia, but we have offices in more than 35 countries and operations in more countries than that. So initially I was working for ICRAF, but since 2018, 2019, there has been a merger process between World Agroforestry Center ICRAF and the Center for Forestry Research CIFOR. And CIFOR-ICRAF really envision a more equitable world where forestry and landscapes enhance the environment and well-being for all. And we have, I included our website down here with a lot of interesting materials, a lot of scientific insights into various aspects related to our work. So looking at the evolution of ABCD at CIFOR-ICRAF, we have gone, like as what has been indicated initially, we have really undergone some big changes and have developed the work we've been doing a lot. We started in 2011 with a project that was called Making Agroforestry Work for Smallholder Farmers that mainly used individual ABCD tools. Then we came on very strongly in 2015 with a project that was called Accelerating Adoption of Agroforestry, where we designed and implemented a model that we call Building Assets and Agency, completely integrated model that is very beautiful, but also long and integrated. And since then, we have in 2020 started with the Pharma Dashboard project that uses the Leaky Bucket tool for personalized data reports. The Regreening Africa Sustainability Planning that we started in 2021, and that will be ongoing until next year. That is embedding ABCD in envisioning tools for sustainability. And then the ABCD in Regreening project that we also started in 2021 that really aligns ABCD with agroecology and process tracing in the context of contribution analysis. So looking at the Pharma Dashboard project, what we do, so I said we are using the Leaky Bucket tool, and I'm not sure whether you have been introduced to the Leaky Bucket tool or not, but yes, okay, Kate is nodding. But then you know that the Leaky Bucket is our star tool and the thing that is just amazing. So we have been in our AAA project, as we call it, we use the Leaky Bucket in the version of the integrated household Leaky Bucket for annual data collection among our lead farmers. So we collected by now 7 rounds of data, annual data, integrated household Leaky Bucket data. And then we use that data to provide individual personalized data, like dashboards, if you will, data reports. And one of the really important parts in doing that was really to understand which data visualization speaks to the users and makes sense to them. In terms of the data that is included in the reports, and let me just press here. I just like cropped out one of the reports that we have, that you have a sense. So this is 3 pages. I had to cut them together and you can't see the details, just so that you have an idea. In terms of timelines, we have different reports for the individual years. So the one you're seeing here is for individual years. And then we also have a report where individual lead farmers can see their progression across all the years that we've collected the data. In terms of the data that is included, so there's a section on the first page, and on the first page, and the beginning of the second page is really only an individual person's personal data. But then there's also comparative elements. All of that is anonymous, and the reports are only given to the individual users. But there are comparative sections within a person's farm group where the individual data is compared to the data of the wider group that they belong to. Also within the commodity group, because we had trained the lead farmers at the time in specific value chains or sub-value chains. So within, we call them the commodity groups. And then we also have a section where we're comparing men and women across these different groups. And then there's also the summary section, the notes section, where we encourage how the data can be used and how it can be made useful in terms of influencing people's behavior in a positive manner, if you want. So looking at the purpose of sharing this data, so the direct purpose really is to support people to contextualize the results by thinking about their goals and by differentiating challenges that are within and outside of their control. So for example, what we have is that people will look at their reports and see that they did well in one year in a specific crop, but less well in another crop, that they start thinking about what influenced that, which decisions they made. There are also sections where people can take notes to make observation as to why they took certain decisions and which things worked out well for them, which things did not work out well for them. And the idea really is to inspire them, to inspire the users to achieve their goals by highlighting their strengths. So it's really it comes out very clearly, for example, what are the top 3 income generating crops in which year, etc. And then again, the section of identifying practices and strategies that led them to having that, to encourage and inspire them to pursue those strategies. And then also the idea that the report can support people to set up an action plan to build on strengths and follow new strategies.
Lisa,
yes,
Lisa,
please.
we have a one question, wondering if the text or the screen can be made a little bit bigger, but that might not be possible at this point. But we're going to email, everybody will have access to this PowerPoint to look at later. There was one question, I think maybe it's just a bit small on some people's screens. And I had a question for you. When you say dashboards, is this a thing that people are doing on little tablets or on small mobile phones, or is this a paper-based? When you say dashboards, collecting all this information, what's the actual physical tool?
The physical tool is still very much paper-based and very old school.
That's great.
Yes,
I was just curious.
That is something we're thinking about and working on.
Okay.
So I'd be
Great.
happy to speak about that more. And apologies if the slides are a bit small. I should have thought about which kind of devices people are using. And
That's
if it
okay.
is about the size of the report itself, I'll be happy to share the reports. Of course, I'll have to make sure that the individuals cannot be recognized, but that might also have been why
that's great.
Up, isn't it?
Thank you so much. So
yes.
Carry on. It's really interesting. Thank you, Lisa.
Super. Okay, then so beyond the direct purpose of why we are preparing those reports and sharing them with people, and so we prepare them, we share them with people, then we have conversations, focus group discussions, if you will, to understand what is useful, what is not useful, what could be different, and how it is being used and in which ways. And then we also look at specific questions, underlying questions. But the underlying consideration why we're doing this is really the idea of giving back the data. It's one of the main concerns that scientific institutions, but also development partners often face, that we collect a lot of data from people. We ask them all kinds of things that are very personal to their lives very often. One of the things that really matters to me as well is really this question of who's asking whom, what, and why. But then this idea of not being extractive and sharing back, making sure that whatever data, whatever we are getting from the data, at least we also make sure that it's useful to the people who are giving us the data. And then also a second underlying consideration is about the principle of co-creation of knowledge, so that there's co-creation of knowledge in the exchange process. And the desired outcome is really to promote the use of that data for evidence-based decision-making. That the idea is look at, and not just external data. We have a lot of this external data being broken down to the individual scale. We have that a lot also, especially with technological innovation, that people have a possibility of accessing rain data, soil acidity data, all these things. But that is big data being broken down to their small level. But very rarely do people have access to understanding their own practices better through a data lens that is then analyzed. And we believe that is really amazing. And so the second thing I wanted to speak about is our Regreening Africa sustainability planning. Regreening Africa is a very ambitious project that has been implemented this is the 5th year now, and it's being extended to next year. It is implemented across 8 countries in Africa, including in Kenya. And it is led by ICRAF, but implemented through World Vision, but also other partners. There's CRS, there are some smaller NGOs in some of the countries. I think in Ghana we have another one. And the countries are, let me not make a mistake, Kenya, Ethiopia, Rwanda, Mali, Ghana, Senegal, Niger. I might be forgetting some. Yes, so those are the countries. And so the Regreening Africa project is really a land restoration project through the promotion of evergreen agriculture, especially FMNR, farmer managed natural regeneration, which in and by itself is an agroecological practice, if you will, because it's the idea of valorizing and using what you have and building on that. So the objectives in Kenya of that project is to reverse land degradation through agroforestry on 150,000 acres hectares, and contribute to food security of 50,000 households. And it's an integrated and complicated model, if you will, but they have their direct sites in Homa Bay and neighboring counties. And the project had been ongoing, and then some of the previous project lead approached me and asked me whether I thought it was possible to use some of the insights that we had from doing the more complex, more integrated ABCD and include that in sustainability planning for the project. Sustainability planning here was done in the context of the program transitioning out. So like exit strategy, if you will, or like transition strategy. But we really built it and constructed an integrated process that has 6 steps that we are now using actually to start projects rather than to transition. So the sustainability planning, as I just said, has 6 steps, which goes through the identification and definition of communities of place in relation to specific landscape scale opportunities or threats. Then once that is established, there are the next 4 steps that are done conjointly with those community representatives that are, we described the whole process of how that can be done. That includes community vision mapping, or the idea, where do we want to go? Causal analysis, why haven't we gotten there yet? And then asset and stakeholder mapping, which resources do we have at our disposal to take us there? And then community action planning, how can we do it by building on what we have after all? And then there's a very specific 6th step, because the planning guideline, if you will, is targeted at the implementing organizations. So we included a 6th step that is about supporting action plan implementation as an external actor. So which steps need to be taken, and what is the role of an external actor to ensure that there's true community-driven and led action? How it's a concretization of how leading from the back can be done. So as part of the sustainability planning step 4, we have this ABCD inspired identification of assets and stakeholders. And Gord was interested in me speaking in more detail about that, but I think I'll skip that for now. And if we are interested in seeing more details about the individual tools, I'll be happy to do that later. But just to indicate that the general objective of this step, of the step 4 in the sustainability planning, is to understand and value what the community already has that can be used to pursue the community vision in view of the experienced barriers. So we have seen that the idea is to join, to support people to establish a joint vision, to understand why they haven't gotten there yet, and then to really understand what they have in order to get towards their vision. So that is the general objective. Then the specific objectives are several, and they're all intertwined. But the idea really is to foster a sense of having assets to draw on, and that often these assets are much more than we expect. To foster inclusion also by valuing each person's unique skills and talents. To foster understanding for persons and networks that can be leveraged. So social assets, if you will, that are around you that you can draw into your activities and make sense of. And then very strongly this idea of fostering agency. So the idea that one is able to influence their lives positively, and that it is possible to start with what we have to get to where we want to go. Very strong objective of ABCD in general, fostering agency. And what we did now in this sustainability planning guide, because as God said initially, I have been working for several years to understand in which different ways ABCD can be done, if you will. And so here the idea really was like, is it possible to just use a snapshot of ABCD, a short approach, not just a tool, but a short approach, and still have it be meaningful? So what we proposed is that there was different asset mapping options that can be used in this wider sustainability planning context, and that the implementing team that is conducting the sustainability planning with the community can either select one of the single options or propose to the community to do all 3, or select one of the 3. And we also made an effort to understand which tools might potentially be more meaningful depending on contextual factors. As you know, agroecology is a lot also about understanding context and options by context. So we developed this menu, if you will, with the 3 options that can be used for the asset assessment. And the 3 options are human and social asset assessment, local economy assessment, and natural and physical resource assessment. And we made this effort to try and understand for which context they fit. So if you look at the last column, you'll see that for option 1, so human and social asset assessment is suitable for communities that value social capital. And as we know, like they're all useful in and by themselves, but the idea was if we had to pick one, what could we look out for, okay? So we said they are suitable for communities that value social capital and also potentially for less sedentary communities, because social capital is usually very strong and very important and something to build on. And then for the local economy assessment, we consider that it is suitable for communities that tend to respond to economic rationale, and potentially for those that are more focused on personal development rather than community development. And then the third option, natural and physical resource assessment, we thought that it was particularly suitable in areas where environmental sustainability is valued at the landscape level. So for example, in an area that by law or by practice is a conservation area. So where we already have the environmental rationale, this can be a very important way of going about it. And while I will not go into detail how we are proposing to do those different steps and options, I just wanted to explain perhaps the objectives of the different asset assessment options. So for social and human asset mapping, option 1, the core objective is to support the community to know themselves and others better, and to help them connect the dots. So this includes the specific objectives to recognize the variety of strengths, talents, and skills that exist within the community, to acknowledge that everyone has gifts, some even having hidden talents, and that everyone has something to contribute. Then, as I was saying in general about ABCD, social and human asset mapping has this very strong emphasis on developing a sense of agency or positive attitude towards one's ability to influence one's life positively. But then, like when it goes more towards the social assets now beyond the human ones, the idea of building connections with each other based on skills and interests, and to seek connections with informal associations and formal institutions for strategic partnerships. I'll be happy to speak about all of these things in detail, but that is the general objectives. Then the second option, the local economy assessment, is really about understanding the local economy better and how to improve community well-being by understanding the local economy better. So specific objectives that fall under that is really to understand what brings means into the community and what drains them. And by extension, since the community leaky bucket tool that we use for that can also be used at a commodity level, can be used at a household level. So that can be adapted, right? The idea of what brings means into the household and what drains means from the household. And various other ways that I will also be happy to speak about. And then, like, really in terms of improving the situation by understanding, is to identify options how to increase the water level in the bucket. And there are several strategies that we usually pursue and that we encourage the community to think through. But they organize basically around 3 core principles: the idea of increasing inflows and reducing outflows, the idea of increasing diversification of inflows to cushion against shocks, and too much inflows of outflows. For example, big inflows for big outflows to ensure that there's planning and that there's less surprises. And then to strategize also how to increase the circulation within the bucket. So the circular economy element is explicitly included in the leaky bucket, and in the way we described it in the sustainability planning guide, that is the steps 3 to 6, in case they are followed. And then just to finish up on the objectives of the different asset assessment options. Option number 3, natural and physical asset mapping, is about understanding and appreciating the diversity of existing physical and natural assets and how to draw on them. Here, specific objectives is to appreciate the natural and physical resources that are part of the community, and that these resources are theirs, both to use and to protect. Second, to understand the diversity in terms of land use, tenure, soils, flora, fauna, and to identify opportunities based on the start with what you have principle. So this is very briefly so here I included like how to do it in practice slides, but I'm jumping them through now. I'm happy to speak about that later. So now I'm coming to my last project. And yeah, I'm sorry, I'm speaking a lot, but I hope it's okay. And I know it's a lot of input as well. So the project that we are implementing at the moment in Western Kenya is we call it ABCD in Regreening. It is funded by BioVision Foundation from Switzerland. Switzerland in general, many Swiss actors fund a lot of agroecology many agroecology initiatives, and our sites are in the Regreening Africa sites here in Homa Bay in Western Kenya. We have defined 3 outcome areas for our project, one at farm level, one at process level, and one at system level, which I had spoken about, where that agroecology is really interested in looking at all 3 levels in parallel, if you will. So at farm and practice level, we're looking at behavior change towards greater sustainability. So the idea of adoption of environmentally sustainable practices. At process level, we look for contextually suitable, scalable, community-driven approaches. So this idea of what works where for whom, and with which kind of approach. And system level, we are observing institutional change towards an institutionalization of proposed approaches. So basically what we're looking at is, by implementing the project, in which way are we able to influence how any of our organizations picks up and takes up the approaches that we're proposing. So the specific ABCD approaches. And the sustainability planning, for example, is a direct outcome of me having implemented this project, and both ICRAF and World Vision are thinking that this is a really useful way to operate even in the wider project. And that's how we got to the sustainability planning in all the 8 countries. And then just to speak about the science, because here I speak a bit more also about the science in terms of agroecology. We are conducting a robust realist contribution analysis based on an activist theory of change, since we are a scientific institution. And we are using a tool from BioVision to monitor the project outcomes at farm level. And I'll speak about that tool in a minute, because I assume that might also be interesting for you. Before I get to the tools and the metrics, if you will, I wanted to briefly introduce the logic and the practice in the ABCD and Regreening project. So we are and there are many different ABCD principles in the literature, and different authors identify them in different ways and subdivide them in different ways, if you will. But the three principles that we use the most here in our work at ICRAF is: everyone has gifts, start with what you have, and relationships build a community. Again, also in terms of the practice, there are different ways of doing ABCD, there are different tools and all these things. And ABCD, yes, they're fantastic tools, especially something like the leaky bucket is an absolutely incredible tool that makes a very big difference to people. But beyond being about tools, ABCD is really a process. It's an engagement process. So it's about a way of doing things and a way of interacting with people, much more than the individual tools that are being used. And the practice that we're using now in this project, and as I was saying, we're testing different ways in which ABCD can be done. So in this project here, we have a 5-step approach, where we have, which is very closely based on what the Coady Institute is teaching in general. But this is like our explicit version of how we do it. And we have the introduction session to ABCD. That is important to frame the initial activity, that ABCD means focusing on assets and strengths, because we're operating in a context that is very strong in terms of needs-based approaches, that has a lot of dependency, like the historically trained dependency syndrome, if you will. And we are so emphasizing really that this approach is about looking at assets and strengths matters. And as part to concretize that then we are going to the appreciative interviewing, where we are setting the tone of self-belief by sharing stories of personal achievements, hope, and courage. I hope that you have heard about that as well, because it's fantastic. And then we go into the asset assessment and mapping, asset strength opportunity mapping, to get to this point of understanding where you are and what you have and where you can start. And then the integrated community action planning, where the strengths and assets are mapped with development objectives by communities, and the external facilitator is just in a supportive role. And then the 5th part, also very important, participatory monitoring and evaluation to trace the most significant changes and to readjust community action plans, which is a very nice way for external actors to continuously show presence and provide support without like having to do much and without needing a very big institutional structure. And our contribution claim specifically, I said that we're conducting this theory-based contribution analysis. So our contribution claim really focuses on 3 levels, and the idea that ABCD fosters attitudinal and behavioral change in terms of people and realizing what they have and believing in their own ability to influence their lives positively. And second, people deciding to start with what they have and to use it better in a more coordinated way. And 3, people coming together and using their social networks to find solutions, either within themselves, so at a community level, or by partnering with external actors. So like in reality, it's like 4 steps, but the idea of I sometimes like think about it in terms of knowledge, attitude, and practice, if you will. So the knowledge of what you have and the knowledge of self, in terms of understanding you're able to influence yourself. The attitude, that is more positive towards yourself, and then you really start and you do something based on what you have, individually, at community level, and in collaboration with external partners. So that's what we're doing. And then in terms of, I spoke about speaking more about the metrics session. So there are different ways in which different projects and programs look at measuring the degree of agroecological integration, which is the official term that is being used for agroecologyness, if you will, to which extent something is agroecological. So like the term that we use usually is measuring the degree of agroecological integration. And as I said, based on the 10 elements from FAO, there's the TAPE project, the TAPE metrics, the TAPE approach, that is at project level. And then based on the 13 principles, there are different tools that are being used. All of these, the 3 that, sorry, I have to drink 1 second. Okay, I'm back, sorry. So TAPE is built around the 10 elements from FAO, and the actual agroecology criteria tool designed by the BioVision Foundation is built around the 13 principles. And they have also like sub tools, if you will, or adaptations of the tools for business level and for the farm level. So looking at FACT, FACT has 58 indicators, if you will. It's like structured in a kind of a questionnaire. It has 58 criteria, as they call them, that are aligned to the 13 HLP principles across the 12 system components. So you see the system components here: soil, water, crops, livestock, trees, pests, energy, household workers, community, value chain, policy. And they are subdivided in the on-farm and the off-farm. So from household is the off-farm system components. And as you can tell as well, like in the subdivision that I'm proposing here, there is a stronger emphasis on on-farm system components and the principles that have to do with agroecological management. Then there are the economic diversification here, which is on number 7, has 7 criteria, so that is 12%. And then there's a limited lower right, on what is in the darker blue here. So that is the principles that have to do with social equity, and that are typically on off-farm components. So this is how the tool looks in general, and it's a very interesting tool. And what we did, like within our project, is that we started mapping where we expected our project to have to make positive contributions, and we just literally looked through the different criteria. And they are like, the tool is organized that it has, it's a Likert scale. It has a 4 level Likert scale. Sorry, and we just looked at where we expected positive influence from our project, and we marked the ones where we saw a clear positive influence in green, the one where we thought there was an indirect positive effect in yellow, and then we identified a few criteria that we felt were not relevant in our context in blue, and the other ones we left that we didn't see. The ones that we did not see a positive influence, we marked in blue, and then there are a few that have these symbols inside there where we didn't see the positive contribution. But the thing that matters to us, and that I just want to like also share with the team, is that it's always possible to build on an existing tool but adapt it in the way that it makes sense to us. So what we did is we added more criteria. If you look at the screen, you will see all these pink criteria that we added because we believe that taking an ABCD approach makes a particular contribution to those. And we defined them together with the scale, and when we collected data, we used them alongside. So not only did we change the tool, if you will, and that is like the point I'm trying to make, it's important to define what matters, and then it's important to measure and generate evidence about what matters. So it's great to use existing frameworks because then we contribute to a body of knowledge that exists, but it's always possible to adapt it and to look look ahead. And on the initial tool, you see the red areas that I circled in red. Those were the ones where we saw the biggest positive contribution in the initial fact tool. And the way we adapted it, then it also provided a very strong influence in those green other elements. And all of these, as you can tell, from principle 8 to 13, all of these are the social equity principles. So like a very clear alignment, if you will, with our expected effect with the agroecology principles. And then like to end on this, and there's a lot of conversation to be had about metrics, huh? And I'll be happy to continue speaking about this. It's a fairly complex undertaking, and there's also a lot of research that is still being done about that. And as at ICRAF, we have actually 2 projects. So God said that I was leading the Kenya implementation of the CGR Agroecology Initiative, which is true. And the work package 2 of the Agricology initiative revolves around metrics, about the question of who is deciding what is being measured, what matters to be measured in the context of agroecology. And then beyond that, we have an entire project that is called Metrics, which is part of a bigger program, EU-funded program that is called Transitions. And this is a 3-4-year project that we're undertaking, where we look specifically at all metrics that exist, compare, try and understand contextual variation, to be able to assess the degree of agroecological integration in different contexts. Okay, so this is now, I'm through with my part 2, moving on to part 3, and I'm seeing that the hour is almost over, so I'll try and do this a bit more briefly, but as I said as well, like I'll be sharing all of this, and I'll be happy to have more conversations about all of the contents that I'm presenting and beyond. So in part 3, conceptual congruence, first of all, bringing concepts together, how agroecological is ABCD, and I have spoken obviously quite a bit about that, especially in the context of our ABCD and regraining project, but just like having a look at the conceptual framework. Then we conducted an analysis of the conceptual responsiveness between the HLPE and the 3 ABCD principles that we use, that I can briefly introduce to you. And then I wanted to share some preliminary results from the Pharma dashboards project focus group discussions that we just had last month. And then just share a brief list of elements that my team that is based in Western Kenya composed in terms of agroecology in practice that is easy to build on, that is easy to spot and to build on as you're the one who's implementing on the ground. I'll run through this quickly. This is a bit like complicated, but I spent quite some time really trying to understand in which ways ABCD, agroecology, and power concepts, especially collective action concepts, align. So I had explained to you that the 3 principles that we use, this is like the green ones, the third line, the green ones, the 3 ABCD principles that we use is everyone has gifts, start with what you have, and relationships build community. And in the ABCD and regraining project, we have specific claims that turn around these 3 elements so that can easily be aligned, setting the tone for self-belief in relation to everyone has gifts. Individuals use what they have in the context of start with what you have. And then communities share and use what they have. This is the community level, joint collective action, and strategic collaboration is the joint action by seeking strategic partnerships with external actors, which is aligned to the general principle of a relationships build community. Now, looking at the role and power concepts and in the context of empowerment as a process, everyone has gifts, or setting this tone of self-belief really ties in neatly with the power within concept related to enhancing self-respect and acceptance, whereas the start with what you have, individuals use what they have, ties in well with the power to creating new principles concept, and the relationships with community. Communities share and use what they have, and strategic collaboration ties in very well with the power with acting in a group concept. And then like looking at the last line, I was trying to look at how now these things align with the operational principles. So remember the 13 principles are organized in 3 operational principles. So the first two are part of the resource efficiency. Then the next 5, 6 are part of the resilience, overall resilience element, and then the remaining 6 are part of social equity. And I was looking at how they align, and in my perception, the resource efficiency and resilience tie in well with the power too. The power with ties in well with the social equity. But then also like ABCD basically helps to make agency explicit as a precondition for all of these, because the idea that everybody needs to be included and that people need to believe in themselves and the power within concept is so fundamental for collective action, but is not explicitly addressed. So in my perception, it ties in very well, but ABCD basically helps to make the importance of agency explicit for agroecology as a precondition for everything else, if you will. Then just briefly, and I'll go through that, like I'll spare you the details, if you will, but we're just looking at together with my team as well, how the three ABCD principles tie in with the 13 HLPE principles, and doing those exercises is useful in any context, even if it's not necessarily used, is very useful. We're like looking at which one, like where the combinations are. And we basically found that the core overlap is in these 7 principles: recycling, biodiversity, synergy, economic diversification, co-creation of knowledge, social values and diets, and fairness. Now coming to my almost last slides here. Yes, the hour is almost over. Coming to my almost last slides. So as I said, in the context of the Pharma Dashboards project, we are composing those personalized data reports, and then we are sharing them with the individual lead farmers with whom we've been working since 2015. And then we conduct focus group discussions. And we did this recently together with one of our colleagues from the Coady Institute as well, who accompanied us. And then we are in the process of analyzing the data to see how it aligns. And so we were looking at like in which ways we are finding data and statements in the focus group discussions that align with the 13 principles. And I'll go through them fairly quickly, but I just want to tease out a few things so that you see how it translates, if you will, on the ground. So the recycling principle, for example, translates very strongly and across all of our projects that we have in the idea of people starting to use farmyard manure because it's cheaper and it's available. If you look for, and you know that the Pharma Dashboards project is the continuation of a much wider ABCD project. So they have done all the different assessment tools, etc., etc. But for the last 3 years, we have mainly worked with the groups with the leaky bucket. So very often, like through this economic rationale, if you will, resource efficiency is being encouraged, and through the economic rationale, diversification is encouraged, and which really like ultimately contributes to agroecology. So one of the ways in which we see that strongly, as I just said, and in relation to recycling, is really this use of farmyard manure. Here then also like farmyard manure that is substituting external inputs and especially fertilizer. So that then corresponds to the input reduction principles. And beyond that, the realization of existing assets and targeted growing of certain foods for consumption, using local streams for irrigation, and growing animal feeds to ensure that external and often chemical inputs are being reduced. In terms of soil health, there's a lot of use, again, also in the context of farmyard manure, but going beyond that, there's a lot of use of organic matter to support soil in the form of organic manure, practicing agroforestry, intercropping, crop rotation, and diversification of crops. Looking at animal health, one very interesting component is that there's a lot of realization of the economic importance of animals, especially chicken, especially among men, which is typically not a men's domain, if you will. And I took this statement here from one of the reports where one of the lead farmers said things have to be taken care of in order to grow. So this idea of, I understand how important those animals are for my leaky bucket, and I understand that in order for them to do well, I need to take care of them, which ties in with the animal health principle. In terms of biodiversity, I selected 2 things that I found in the data. One that the leaky bucket in and by itself shows the importance of diversifying on-farm crop production to ensure that there are more inflows into the leaky bucket. But then also like the realization of the benefits of trees on farm for consumption, to sell for firewood, to improve the environment, and to provide shade. So this idea again of looking at what you have and what it gives you and what it contributes to you, leading to a more perhaps multifaceted realization of the things that are already at one's disposal and to more valorization of the same. And looks in terms of synergies, like all the previous elements that I've shown, like really clearly show this idea of how biodiversity, soil health, animal health, recycling, and input, like interact, and input production interact. And in terms of the economic diversification rationale, one of the core things that we're pursuing, another quote, the leaky bucket teaching has made me diversify to increase my income inflows and easily monitoring my incomes and expenses. And we have observed various rationales: growing more food for consumption to reduce expenses, engaging in short and long-term income streams across seasons to ensure that there's a balanced leaky bucket. Then a lot of emphasis also on robust off-farm income, which is always important as external actors working in a context, or in an agricultural context, if you will, to remember that people's lives are not just on the land and on the farm, but that there's also this off-farm component, especially in a context of climate change. And then also this very strong element on serving a ready market, the idea of, is there something I can do by building on what I already have that is actually in demand in the market to increase income, increase inflows and to reduce outflows. So this is the on-farm systems part of the principles, and now looking at the off-farm elements. So in terms of co-creation of knowledge, another quote that I found interesting is, during my free time, I share with my friends and church members the usefulness of the leaky bucket and how effective it is in my life. I even train leaky buckets to my fellow women friends at the market. Something that we observe a lot, that people decide that the leaky bucket is so useful that they take it to other people and therefore share and co-create knowledge. And then also the use of the leaky bucket at the household level. Something that we hear a lot is that when the way we do the data collection for the integrated household leaky bucket every year is that we go and we do one refresher day, and then we ask people to go home and to prepare the leaky bucket, and then we come and collect it and the following week. And that usually leads to household members, especially husbands and wives, working together. And what we are finding by encouraging this process, that they really speak about there being more transparency between husbands and wives at the household level, that there's more joint planning, and also a reduction of domestic conflicts. In the context of social values and diets, and as I said earlier, like some of the principles are phrased in a way that makes them not very easy to understand, but the idea of the social values and diets really includes a lot. I'm looking for, I have this here, build food systems based on the culture, identity, tradition, social and gender equity of local communities that provide healthy, diversified, seasonally and culturally appropriate diets. So it is a very wide thing, and also touches strongly on gender. So here in this context, we have the statement up on the upper side. The leaky bucket teachings have made me reduce manufactured food consumption. For example, preferring cassava and sweet potatoes to bread as my breakfast has made me save what I could have spent on bread. So very important. And then the lower quote, we have been taught to utilize our local available resources. Before the training, we're just buying vegetables, producing enough maize and selling without a plan, which later made us buy again. But since we learned ABCD trainings, we are not only service receivers, but producers as well. And then again, also in context of the household dynamics that we have observed, and that is reported in the data, is more joint working, that different household members understand everybody's contribution to the household, and develop more respect based on understanding individual contributions, and that there's more joint decision making as well. Looking at fairness, some people have reported that the fact that they grow more diverse and better quality crops attracts buyers who pay well, even at the farm gate. And then we also included this based on participatory value chain methods that are also spearheaded by the Coady Institute. We do those market visits and market analysis, participatory market analysis, and some of the lead farmers spoke about how the market surveys have helped them to sell their crops in different markets where they know better price, they can get better prices. In terms of connectivity, so mainly the idea of connecting, being more, shortening the distance between producers and consumers. People have shared various insights into how they are finding market through WhatsApp groups, through partnerships with local institutions, especially local schools, for example. Individual lead farmers engage somewhat like contract farming types of agreements with local schools to deliver food items, especially. And then also the idea that they go and check prices in different markets and that they come together with friends and sell jointly. So an accumulation of goods. I have not found so far something related to land and natural resource governance. I'll have to look for that more carefully. And in terms of participation, so participation here is more in the context of political participation and influencing policy and politics. But what I did find in the data was that there is a group that has a tree nursery, and they now supply lorries full of trees to a government that is planted by the Coady county government, and that other lead farmers are speaking about working together as a group to access markets. And before they plant, they look at the markets and make binding agreements, and spoke about a coffee deal with Korea, which is very interesting, and I assume you have heard of as well. So, oh my God, I still have a lot of stuff actually. I included, so I had asked my team to just look at specific practices they are seeing that they think are particularly conducive in the context of agroecology, and I listed them here, so you can have a look at them as well. I'm getting to my summary, and I do this very briefly. I wanted to walk you through this thing here of ABCD helping to do things differently, because very often we have an idea where we are starting with someone, and we have an idea where we want to reach. This is the point B. And here in the context of agroecology, we even have principles to guide us, but very often we don't really understand, or we don't really know specifically how we can actually achieve it. And in my perception, or in my team's perception, ABCD provides a wide range of different approaches and tools that can be used to really get to this objective in a way that respects the principles, and that's why it matters. And as Paul said as well, and as Kate emphasized as well, ABCD does not stand in isolation at all, and it builds on a lot of interesting other work that other people have done, and it's similar to other things that people do, but the way we're doing it is called ABCD, and we are very happy with it. I have this slide here about to summarize ABCD's potential to strengthen the social dimension of agroecology. I think I'll end with this one here. So our first point is that ABCD helps in terms of the focus and scale in targeted outcome areas, because it really emphasizes the focus on the three different levels that are important in the context of agroecology: practice, process, and system. So ABCD really helps to support sustainable practice, sustainable process, and the institutionalization of the process, which then basically means system, or the idea of from practice to process. In terms of concept, what I think ABCD contributes really to strengthening agroecology is that it makes the importance of agency explicit and how agency contributes to structure. In terms of procedure and ethics, it is really about rethinking the way we as external actors do things, we who are part of the system. So really this idea of moving from needs to strengths and preferences, which is so much more aligned with agroecology concepts and ideas and the social movement component than many other things. And then just in science and use of data, I have showed like different ways in which science can be used, and I'm happy to speak about that more. Like we have other tools that we use to collect data, and in the overall idea of the importance of being mindful about what we're measuring and producing evidence about the things that we're measuring, because we have decided that they matter. So really like first this idea of what matters, how can we measure it, and then generating evidence on that. And then really this idea of like data feedback, sharing, giving the data back to the people with whom we are working to make sure that we're not the only one, we're not extractive, we're not the only ones. So yes, as like a summary, if you will, ABCD offers a cross-scalar, multi-actor, actor-based, practical, strength-based ways of fostering just transition, the question of how to do it. Yeah, I have added another slide about how important facilitation is and what the role of external actors is. Basically the idea of leading from behind, stepping back, emphasizing agency and communities' willingness and belief in themselves, so that we do not monopolize their journey, but we are able to collaborate strategically in ways, in areas in which we can make positive contributions, but in a demand-driven manner from communities. So we can walk with them as they look at a holistic vision that they have, and then see how the vision can be broken down in specific objectives, and see to which objectives we as an external partner can contribute, without claiming that we can contribute to everything that matters to communities, or without claiming that what we contribute is the only thing that matters. And just this idea of whatever we engage as external partners with communities, we have to maintain this humbleness of understanding that we're just one piece of the puzzle, and we can contribute, like we can have this humbleness as we are the piece of the puzzle to say, hey, yeah, we are the piece of the puzzle. Do you find this interesting? And to show also how you can interact with others, to really then also lead to much more efficient interactions on all sides. Yes. Then I included here overviews to our new website that has a lot more information about all the things that I've spoken about, videos, publications. And I also included a slide about the transformative partnership platform that we are hosting here at CIFOR-ICRAF that brings together various actors, has its own steering committee and advisory board. It's very interesting. And I do the scientific coordination, and we have various projects that are aligned with the TPP, and we have interactive modules. And as I said, there's the community of practice here on the GLFX website, where there's also more information. I'll be happy to speak about that. And this is the very last one now. And just an overview of the Agroecology Coalition that emerged from UNFSS in September last year. Came from a solution cluster that was offered, I think it was 232, and by now has more than 30 countries and country-based institutions, including the African Union and the European Union, and 60 countries, including Pelham in Kenya and in Uganda, not in Tanzania, I think, but various actors as well. And the Agroecology Coalition operates is a very interesting interface. Bringing together various actors, as we know, all of them relevant for achieving large-scale system-level transformation that we're looking at. Also happy to speak more about that because I'm currently supporting the secretarial function. Yes, that's it for the time being. And just before I finish completely, like I added more slides here. Can you still see my presentation? Yeah. So
yeah,
I added.
We can see it.
I added more slides here. There's discussion questions that we want to bring up, but then I have more additional material just so that you know that is there as well. Brief introduction to ABCD, then an overview of our ABCD training manual that we use that is based on all the materials of all kinds of other actors, and especially very strongly the Coady Institute, but that is the one that we use, and that has a lot of contextually relevant insights. This is the Regreening Africa Sustainability Planning Guide that outlines the different steps in detail. And then I just like left in one slide that shows in more detail how we changed the fact to the fact plus by including more social criteria into the assessment tool. And there are some links specifically to this. Yes, there we go.
So drinking from a fire hose, everybody, as we say.
Yes.
This is an amazing accumulation of knowledge, and it's presented, you had to present it in a really short period of time, and we apologize for that. So great to have these materials and the opportunity for people to go through them more leisurely. Kate and I have been chatting just in the last couple of minutes because of the time we have now, and thank you, Lisa, for that incredible presentation. We're going to take a break, a 5-minute stretch break, and we're not going to have a general Q&A like we were going to have. What we're going to do is after the break, Lisa, I'm going to get you to pull that slide up with the 3 questions.
Yes.
And what we'll do is we'll pose those questions to participants and have a discussion after the break. And anybody with specific questions about your presentation, Lisa, or a question for you or a comment, we're going to ask people to put those in the chat. And that way we can potentially address them as well. So thanks again for an incredible presentation and for all the materials that you're willing to share. I think the connection to your team with the RWCC group is going to be longer term, and there'll be a lot more opportunity for engagement. This is more of a taste, but yeah, let's take a break. And maybe Kate, you have a system for knowing when to call people back. It's when your camera comes back on? Or?
Yes, when my camera comes back on. So we'll just take a 5 minutes now. And also to remember, as I mentioned on Tuesday, many of the materials, ABCD things of tools are available in Amharic and in Swahili. Some we already have, and we'll be able to move those out as part of our next steps, sharing and growing on some of these ideas. So see everybody.
And I forgot to mention that Lisa speaks Swahili.
Well, there you go. All good.
Strength.
All good.
Okay.
We'll see everybody.
I just wanted to say before we're breaking, I'm really happy to be here. If you knew, so we have board meeting this week, And I'm the chair of the staff association. And at the moment we're having our brief with the board, our closed session. And I was like, I want to spend time with those guys.
Okay.
So I'll
Okay.
be happy to be back. Super.
See you all in
Bye-bye.
5. Hello, are there a few people back? I hope people had a brief chance to stretch. And I'm already thinking of planning a session, and we can do them in smaller groups as well, one-on-one or just a couple of people on the leaky bucket tool to go through that more in step by step. I'm really interested in, I have used it briefly, sort of on the side with a partner previously, but the leaky bucket process, going through that. And I think I know where I can find a video actually of it being done, which I may be able to send around to people. So hello, I hope some of our other folks are back. Maybe wave if you're there, or if you feel like turning on your camera so that we can see. And a few people I know have had internet issues and have been popping in and out. I think the at We Action in particular. Yeah, Anna's back from Pelham in Tanzania, which is great. So we have about half an hour. Oh, good, Mnet's here too from We Action. So we have about let's take about 20 minutes or so, I think, to just open it up on aspects from either what Lisa was sharing with us this morning or from Gordon in particular about strength tools that you may be using already in the programs, in your work already, and as we build into the early years of the RWCC. Feel free to either raise your hand or you can turn on your camera and wave.
Yeah, I mean, what I was thinking
people.
is maybe a real simple way to combine some of the questions, so that, because we have so little time, is one, what are the current tools you're using that can be adapted or that are useful already for what you're trying to do? The second is, which of the ABCD tools that you have been introduced to very briefly do you want to know more about, because they seem to hold some potential to be integrated into your work? And the third is, where do all these tools really need to be further strengthened, either for agroecology or for gender issues? Because those have certainly come up time and time again as ones that the tools were never really designed for initially, but can be used for. And the same way Lisa's team has adapted the tools in many ways, I think in incredible ways, for these purposes of both agroecology and social, both the farm kind of related sets of indicators and objectives, and then the non-farm, which are more social equity. They've adapted the tools for being able to get at those. I'm just wondering what folks here are thinking about as they're starting to engage. So I'll just maybe open it up widely, like you say, Kate, and just have people jump in, either by putting something in the chat or turning on their camera and their microphone and jumping in.
Miss a very important meeting.
Hi, Sylvester.
Hi, I missed this somehow. I don't know. I just got reminded on a WhatsApp. Oh my goodness. Did I miss a lot? I think so. Yeah?
We've been going for about an hour and a half already, Sylvester, on ABCD.
Oh, Mama Mia, Mama Mia.
But the good news is we have the presentation, and this is the first of many sessions that we're going to have, and we also have a recording. So perhaps from someone who's been with us for the morning so far.
I never wanted to miss this.
Oh dear,
I was looking for
okay.
the link in the email. Anyway, let's proceed. Let's proceed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm just hoping from some of our colleagues in East Africa. Beatrice has put something in the chat, but I'd like to leave some space. Anyone, a thought? Pratap's joining. He's one of our colleagues. Yes, we will have opportunities to connect. Well, since it's people are still processing and thinking, perhaps Beatrice has asked, how do the methodologies include a critical discussion of the political and economic pressures or oppressions around a community? Perhaps you could give it a very specific, something like around fertilizers, commercial fertilizers versus manure in a community, that the pressure that can be there. How does that come in?
Let me start and then perhaps God and others can build on that. So like spontaneously, I think of several things. Generally, it's a discussion that we sometimes have in ABCD conceptually, whether ABCD proposes a neoliberal model, whether asset-based and strength-based means it's not rights-based. So these discussions exist and they're out there. But the position that we take, if you will, is the idea of people developing agency individually and collectively, and collective action the best way of challenging power structures, and do not substitute the need for systemic change that is also top-down. It's also like in agroecology in general, like if I may just like go a step further, my supervisor, who is Fergus Sinclair, very famous agroecology actor and researcher, he usually speaks about the paternoster principle in agroecology, where system transformation requires both bottom up and top down action. And I think with ABCD helps really how to structure and the how to do collective action bottom up, and by basing itself on people's strengths and people recognizing each other, that is already a creation of structures that oppose dominance, if you will, and oppose individualization. That's at least how I really see it. And the idea of people jointly setting agendas, people jointly deciding how to address certain things. And for example, just to look at really like inequity questions or also political oppression questions, as Beatrice is asking. One thing that we do, for example, in the social asset assessment, that is now general ABCD, in the social asset assessment, we really look at who among the community members who are present might potentially know people in positions of power, where the idea is, how can we humanize the system that is difficult and how can we address it jointly? So where very practically the idea would be, if among the 15 of us, 3 of us know someone, we might actually jointly walk to that person and try and achieve something. As we are waiting for the big system level to come, that at least we are addressing the things that immediately influence us. Then the second level of what you're saying is exactly that, this idea of it's unfortunate that we live in a world where that is true, but people not consuming and people not buying always more and needing something external is in and by itself in our world is a passive act, isn't it? So the idea of valorizing what you have and starting with what you have and basing yourself on what you have, as opposed to looking for what is it that you need externally, that is also challenging, like power structures in terms of like the economic organization of our societies. That is the next level, I think, that matters. And then there was a particular point I wanted to make, and it just went away. Perhaps God wants to contribute.
I'd be happy to just add something to that if I may, Kate and Beatrice. I mean, this whole notion of dealing with systemic challenges, power imbalances, and so on. ABCD as a field, as it's sort of developed, is sort of unapologetic about not dealing with it head on and at first, but dealing with it over time as capacities and confidence grow. And the reason, and I'll say it, I noticed in your manual, for example, for regreening, Lisa, that you had root cause analysis and some of those other things. We found in the ABCD area that if you start with some of those things, they can be paralyzing for people, because while they do illuminate some of the big problems, a lot of those problems they can't deal with themselves, not alone. And it requires such a large sort of multifaceted approach that it can sometimes lead to a draining of momentum. And this is just my own personal experience. What we have found is by starting with what you have, what you can do right now, building that individual and collective agency, what happens is that power to do things yourself, the power within, the sort of confidence and capacity, and the power with others, that collective agency bit over time as the cycle keeps repeating, creates a situation where the power imbalances may be really stark when you start, but what happens is the community's capacity increases. And at a point where the power imbalances start to narrow a bit and where they start to build some vertical, as you say, knowing people, the network analysis starting to work the system, sons and daughters from the community who work in other institutions, collectively going together, aggregating for the market, all those things, the power imbalances start to narrow. Then they're in a much better position to take on root cause analysis and start to look at how they can use both their horizontal and vertical power to make effect change. That's just our personal feeling, is that it happens over a longer period of time. It isn't direct, and it's about building alternative forms of power to try to narrow the imbalances as opposed to trying to deal with it all at once. And so, for Beatrice, it's an indirect way of getting around it. I don't think the folks that I have worked with in the ABCD area apologize for it, because they realize that there are alternate pathways to do these things, and it's just the way in which we have found a way of keeping momentum going and communities feeling energized and about moving forward, rather than feeling sort of overwhelmed by the enormity of some of the challenges that they face. And I'll just add that.
If I may just add one thought, if I may just add one thought to that, and I've been thinking about this quite a bit as well, is so sometimes when we're interacting with people, they'll tell us, we also do asset mapping. It's like, okay, cool. You do asset mapping, fantastic. Like in general, like we are non-competitive anyway, right? Like when people do great stuff, they do great stuff and it's fantastic. It is, full stop. But then sometimes also people have this way where they don't understand, again, that a tool is not a process. A tool, even a sequence of tools, is not yet an engagement. Where the idea is, yes, they can map assets, but then if there's an asset map that you have composed as the external actor, external consultant, and then that lies on your desk for you to have information about the people, but it's not a joint process where people together reflect about who is around them and with whom they can partner, where the let's say, for example, the social network analysis is not done in a context of understanding who is there, so we can build action around that. Perhaps in any mapping exercise, if the idea is not that it's done to build action around it and to draw on what has been found out and to deal with that data in a way that is useful so that it can then be built on, then it's not very useful.
What I'm going to do is share a case study, Beatrice, from Ecuador that I mentioned in Tuesday's presentation. I give one slide on Hambiquiwa, the magic of the plants, a group of indigenous women, that 3 of them coming together in a marketplace. And 10 years later, they have not only do they have a factory that are exporting medicinal and aromatic plants around the world, but they have an Andean School of Medicine. They have school-based programs. They have gender-based violence programs for their members. They have accumulated power in the marketplace. And that kind of vertical power that they have built happened over a 10-year period. But what they started with was three indigenous women feeling, all the pressures that indigenous women feel coming together, quite powerless, really, at the beginning, but over time, by getting other women involved, by organizing, by drawing on Andean forms of leadership, they've managed to build power in wild and wonderful ways. And it's a pretty detailed case study, and I'm going to send a link. It's on our website. We do have a Spanish version as well, but I'll send just as an example, I think, of what we're talking about here.
And perhaps also to add on that again, since we're operating in a Global Affairs Canada funded project, and we are all interested in gender dynamics as well, I think what we do look a lot, like as I was saying, like we're looking at these contextual factors to understand what works where, for whom, and why, right? And what we really see in terms of like household dynamics is that these tools, especially when both parties are included, if you will, those tools really help generate conversation at the household level and this appreciation for the other. That is like something that we see fundamentally. Like this idea of everybody has gifts or everyone has gifts is not just something we say. It is, I think what ABC does is really trying to unlock like people's awareness for all the wonderful things that they have around them. It doesn't mean that we are blind to the things that are difficult, but the idea of if already I understand what I have around me, it is incredible. And one of the typical things we see a lot is that very many men report about how the pressures they are facing as, you know, men in the patriarchy, how these pressures are reducing when they start learning that it is A, okay to listen to someone, B, wonderful to be supported by someone, and that is not just someone who sits there as well, but someone who actually has something individual to contribute. And then really like we move towards this joint planning and sharing of objectives and successes. So we really see a lot of improvements in household dynamics. And just like on a side note here as well, like one of the things that we always see in all wherever we work is like after we do the leaky bucket, there's a drastic reduction in terms of the alcohol that men drink, because men realize how much money they spend on alcohol. And that in and by itself already improves household dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, Bez just brought a great idea. Shamilis, is your connection good enough? We had a separate meeting actually yesterday on agroecology approaches that we need to write about more for global affairs. Shamilis, would you be able to share a little bit on how local ecological knowledge is prioritized, and if you see some good connection to the type of thing Lisa has been talking about from your work in Ethiopia?
Okay, very good, thank you. While we are working with the community in the last 15 years, our center is the indigenous knowledge or local knowledge. So we use this local knowledge or indigenous knowledge to enhance endogenous development. We use many tools. For example, in our agroecology project, not in this organization, but in another organization, we used, for example, if you take mapping, we used different types of mappings which help to bring cohesiveness of the different communities, because different communities have different knowledge. When they come together, they share ideas. They, particularly women, are very critical in sketch mapping. What we have realized is women are very critical, and even children sometimes, because, for example, children are aware of the area of the grazing more than other people of the community. So we use both all aids of the community in sketch mapping in three-dimensional model. Again, in Ethiopia, Malka was a pioneer in constructing three-dimensional model. We managed to have it at Bale Mountain National Park, and also at around Addis Ababa, with about 6 different districts. All these people from different districts come together, even from different African countries, involved in that mapping, three-dimensional mapping. And with that, we have seen that the community realized that they are rich. For example, in one of the forests near to Addis, about 25 something kilometers, it is known as Managasha Suba, the oldest park in Africa. After mapping, the community realized that there are more than 30 streams in that forest. Okay, so there are many wells. After that, different women were organized to help themselves in different IG group women which were dependent on the forest for collecting firewood and selling. Now, by simple training, by giving simple entrepreneurship training according to their context, they become even known in the society. I have many stories which are collected. Maybe one day I'll share you. One woman particularly known as she was living in very small grass hut, but after she participated in this, her children are also given to the rich farmers for looking after the cattle. But after she organized with her group, she became the owner of the corrugated house owner. And also she became the leader of the ukub, ukub in Ethiopia. And this is the
That's a rotating savings and credit scheme, a traditional, yeah.
Yeah. So this is one thing. And also concerning, for example, for women stream, there are many small streams which do not give water. The community identified them in their village, near Talacho area, Talacho Peasant Association. By identifying that, they demand, please help us only small amount. They use their labor, they use their different materials, stone and so on. And now at 3 sites of one village, they have their own water. That water helped the woman a lot. For example, that water set, it is a set. It has 4 components: pipe water for drinking, for kettle, for washing clothes, and also for animals. This is the result of the mappings. After the mapping helped a lot, because the mapping process takes about 7 days, 8 days. So during this time, they discuss a lot. And another one is ecological calendar. Ecological calendar is the best approach, which has many components.
Yes, I'm just thinking, Shemilas, as you give those to the idea of the mapping and drawing out the more things around something like a stream and the forest, but then the calendar aspect, I think of that as some of the things Lisa showed. Mapping calendars aren't just time, they're also the activity over time, over the year, in those 13 different areas, and how that all maps together. There's just some amazing crossover that we can see, and I really hope we will be continuing this process on the married tools, both within the country programs in RWCC and between them. I'm just wondering if, and looking at our time, since unfortunately we have a very hard stop right at the top of the hour, as we know, Lisa's in a board meeting at the same time, and today is Gord's last day of his working career. So we don't have nearly as much time as we'd like, but there will be, within a few weeks, I will have set up some more on this. Is there somebody else who would like to give an example, or something that's just getting in their mind, a little spark from today? We've had a great Ethiopia example. Is there anybody else who has something they'd like to share just at this time before we need to wrap up?
Could I perhaps ask a question?
Of course, Lisa.
So that is just a very particular one. Since we are based in Kenya here, I was wondering whether that there would be a possibility perhaps for the Kenya team, like for me to meet with the Kenya team, just to find out as well, like what the program is doing and what you're interested in, and just to see it also like more locally, whether we have opportunities to work together, depending on how flexible your program is. But it would be great. And what Gord was saying as well is, so there's a lot of changes, and I'm not sure like how familiar you are with the CJR, but there has been an institutional restructuring, and we used to be 15 centers that all fell under the CJR, and then 3 of us decided not to join the new superstructure that was created, which is called the One CJR. So ICRISAT, CIFOR, and ICRAF did not join the 1CJR, and they now have a new way of operating, and they fund research action through so-called initiatives. And there's an agroecology initiative, which is one of 31 initiatives that are being funded from this year onwards by this new structure of the 1CJR. And it is in 8 countries, and I'm leading the implementation in Kenya. And we are looking at walking across that gradient between Murang'a, Kiambu, Machakos, and Makueni counties. So, and then we have like partners across the country. So I just thought we might have like points where we could,
Great.
interact.
I see Julia from Seed Savers Network is absolutely going to be, we will connect to the Kenyan partners team of Seed Savers Network, Roots, and EVOS East Africa as well. And oh, I just had there was another connection there in Kenya that I was thinking of. But oh yes, our Sheila Rao, who is a SeedChange staff member, who's our gender equity and social inclusion specialist, is going to be traveling to Kenya later in June. She's going to be there from the 14th to the 24th, hopefully, there for about 10 days. And I think that might be a really good anchor time. Perhaps everybody could get together around Gilgil at the little training center there at Seed Savers Network. They have a good bit of space. It's not too far from Nairobi, but there might be a good opportunity there. So I will make sure to connect as that trip is getting planned and have some face-to-face time, because they're in the early stages of the program, as you know. Okay. Well, this is one of those cases where one's plate is completely full in front of you, and you want to spend hours enjoying every wonderful piece that's been put in front of you and thinking about it. But unfortunately, we do have a very short period of time. It's late in the day for all of you. But as I keep reiterating, we're definitely going to be getting together, and I would be really happy to talk through particularly the leaky bucket tool, which I say I've used a bit, and we will connect with Coady, a key partner with us in this project, and putting together courses, offering opportunities for online and regional courses and things like that with Coady is on the agenda. Lisa's going to share the slides there. She's given her email address to everybody, but we will put all of this together and keep moving forward. But we're also going to be doing some of this with someone in spirit with us, but not on the email as much. With that, I'm going to ask Eileen to say a few words to wrap us up this morning.
Thanks so much, Kate, and especially all of the SeedChange team, Beatrice, Pratap, Lauren. Always great to work with you. It's been a really full couple weeks, I think, of pretty amazing activities. So now we're getting really excited about getting into implementation sometime soon, and that'll be another chapter to the journey. I want to also just thank everybody for participating today. I see a great turnout, and I know yesterday there was lots of meetings between the gender group as well as the agroecology group. So, you know, recognizing the busyness of the week, I'm really grateful that you were able to take time this week to hear from Gord, to learn from Gord, who shared his experiences in a very rapid introduction to asset-based community development. And I'm very excited Lisa has joined us, because Lisa and as a partner, I mean, Lisa as an individual, but also the partnership that we have had with Lisa goes back quite a ways. And Coady, I would be remiss if I'm not thinking about how all of this work is connecting. And you heard me last week talking about what is our collective impact? What is the social change that we're going to see? How is this project going to be any different than the previous? And making these connections with other like-minded individuals and organizations and expertise, like what we've had today with Lisa joining us, is really important to me. And I think it's also important to all of you, because we know that it's going to take all of us to really think about really moving the dial on change, and particularly in supporting rural women farmers in their own empowerment journey. Sorry, hold on. Sorry. So Lisa, thank you so much for making some time. And Coady, I'm really interested in ensuring that we do continue to bring in Lisa where it makes sense as part of an extension of the Coady team, if I can say that, Lisa, and continuing this work together alongside the other really talented and expert colleagues that are on the call. So thank you so much, and I would be remiss if I don't have a special thank you to my dear colleague Gord. It's going to be an emotional day and a half now moving forward, but Gord has right up to the very end. He's just been delivering and giving and giving and giving. So Gord, thank you so much. On my behalf for being part of this program this week. You keep saying you're out of here, but I just keep thinking of ways to reel you back in. So we're going to let you have your break, and then we'll see what happens. But thank you so much. And thanks to everybody. ABCD is not ending because Gord is leaving the building. We have a lot of expertise in Coady, but we wanted you to start with the best, and then we'll keep going. So
wonderful. It was, I said it on Tuesday and I'll say it again. I appreciate the opportunity to have as my last engagement, this opportunity to meet all of you. And I wish I had more time to spend with you. When I hear Kate say, we're going to be doing a session on the leaky bucket, and I could feel my wife pulling my shirt back in and saying, get back here. You committed to not doing anything for the next little bit. But anyway, I will be following Rural Women Cultivating Change from a distance, and I think it's a fantastic initiative. I've been a huge fan of SeedChange since when they were called something else. They've been an NGO that I've watched for years and years and years. When we had a chance to work with them, I just was overjoyed, and I'm going to be really looking forward to this relationship growing, and to see our partners connect to each other is really magical. So yeah, good luck.
Thanks everybody.
And, all the best.
And would you mind if everybody might turn on their camera just for a minute so I can grab a screenshot, if you'll permit me? There's Lauren. Hi, Lauren. Do I see?
We can see who's sleeping.
Shamelis and Demina, how are you? I'm seeing Pratap. Hey, Pratap, I hope you're doing better. I'm glad to see you on the call today. Oh, our action colleagues. There's Rahima Palam. Nice to see you. Yeah, there you are. Nice to see you. Mnet Malet. Nice to see you. Anybody else that can come on? Shamelis, where are you? You're hiding again. I'm going to try to take a picture right now with whoever's on the call. How do I do this? Oh yeah, print screen. Oh, now I'm just pressing airplane mode. That's not good. Here we are. Excellent. Thank you so much, everybody. And have a great afternoon and a great weekend to all of you.
Sure.
Thanks so much, everyone.
I just remembered one thing, actually.
Oh, thank you.
I remembered one thing.
What's that, Lisa?
I was supposed to share this and I forgot.
Right on.
Yes. So,
and I think was it Julia or Anna? Somebody had said, I want that.
I think we all want that.
We all want it.
Yeah, we need to have that. Yeah.
Yes. So we
Maybe
have this brief
Laura.
here.
Yeah.
I think it is not yet full. There was still some changes. So I have to follow up on the status of this. But this is, as you can see, toward a feminist agroecology. And it's still building also on the HLP principles and just showing how the principles are applicable through a feminist lens. And it's really well done.
That's great. We definitely need that, Lisa. Thank you so much.
Yes, I'll be looking at that. And then just give me 1 second. I'm sure you still have something just to discuss as I look for one other resource that I wanted to share as Mr. May. Yes, I found it. I'm just sharing this one here as well. I am not sure whether people are familiar with this here. Have I seen this before?
Yeah, we've seen this one.
Okay, good.
At least I have. And if anybody else needs, I think actually Kate sent it around to all of us.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So thank you so much.
Right.
Great. Okay, everybody, have a great, thank you again, Kate. Thank you, Bea. Thank you, Lauren.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.